Welcome back to Maya Rockstar. So where we last left off, we were talking about rendering out the bouncing ball. So far we've animated the bouncing ball. We don't really have any textures or anything on here. So I'm going to go over how to just kind of quickly throw some lights in here and do some test renders. And then we'll go on to doing some rendering out and bringing it into After Effects. So for the first part here, I really just kind of want to test my motion. And, you can see I could probably work on this some more and, go into the keys. So I showed you how to edit keys and things like that. So you can go into the timeline and really play around with, selecting this and then, either selecting keyframes and moving them around, or remember, we can also go back into our animation editor, graph editor here, and we can play around with this. So I could spend some time here cleaning up keys, and you'll notice I have some extra keys here I don't need on the Y. And then you'll notice also my tangents on the bottom aren't really, they're not really linear the way they should be, so I can go ahead and take those and I'll just go ahead and make them linear just to make the animation look a little bit better. So anyway, you can test this out, in the play view here in Maya. But what's better to really test it out is to bring it into, or really to render out a hardware render. So to do that, we don't have to go through the rendering process and setting up the hardware render and everything. We can do a playblast. But before we do that, let's add some textures on here. So I'm going to go ahead into the rendering editor, Hypershade. And then from Hypershade, I'll go ahead and I'll just create a couple of materials. So I'm going to create one for, let's create one for the floor. And I'm not going to put a whole lot of imagination into this. I'm just going to make a checkered floor. And then I'll take that and drop that onto the ground. Now you'll notice if you might be trying to assign textures, and you can do that by dragging them or right-clicking here after selecting the surface and saying assign textures. And you might notice that you're not seeing anything happen here. So that could be the main reason for that is that if I right-click here, and let's say I have nothing selected here, I can right-click and say select objects with material. So I know that material's on there, but I just can't see the texture. So what I want to do is hit the number 6, and then all of a sudden I will see textures. So textures don't show up unless you have it in texture view. So Maya has many different ways to display things as as wireframes, or as shaded view, or as textured shaded view, and then finally you have lights. So you'll notice I don't have any lights in here yet, so it's totally black. So we've been through some of these things already, but let's just I'm just gonna quickly rehash them. So let's give a texture to the ball too. So again, I'm not gonna do anything fancy here. I'll just go ahead and do a fungi. I'll do advanced texturing in another tutorial here, but let's just go ahead and make it like a like a pink, this pink rubber ball. I'm going to turn off the reflectivity. So I want to crank the reflectivity all the way down here so I have more of a just sort of a rubber ball. I don't really need a whole lot of specular color, so I can reduce the whiteness there and specular color down so that it doesn't appear too shiny. Okay. All right, so now I just need some lights in the scene. So if you look at this, and also I didn't assign that texture, so let me go back and do that. So I'll go to the rendering editors and go back to the Hypershade here, and I'll just drop that. So I can either just drop it on, right, or I can assign it, but I'll just drop it on there. So I did that with the middle mouse button, by the way. That's how I do that. And okay, so I'm looking at my view here. I want to compose my shot too. So you might want to do some different things here, but for now let's just do a play blast. So the whole idea behind this was just to get the whole scene with a little bit of texture on it. We have a kind of a big grid here too, like the floor is a little bit too big, so let's go ahead and scale that down with the R key, remember, and so that the scene fits. And later we can compose this in the camera. So you can do some fun stuff, right? Like have the ball drop off and fall, or roll to an almost stop and then kind of slowly roll off. But you want to play with those animation things here. I want to leave you to your own imagination to do that. But let's kind of go through the the process of doing our first preview of this outside of the timeline.